Boa tarde a todos. Estas serão as
Good afternoon, everyone. This will be my last words in Portuguese. Now I will be speaking in English because it'll be the more.
thanks to Oracle to sponsor this panel, which, at least from my point of view, is one of the most interesting from the summit because we are talking about fan engagement, fan experience, these buzzwords that we are keep repeating for over the past hours, and we will continue to do it because it's especially interesting once we need to define the strategy to engage with our audience. And here we have two of the most, I would say, biggest brands in sports, the Premier League and the Oracle Red Bull racing team, which we also thank you for being part of this, and the technology partner that supports these two brands, but many more, providing data that the brands can explore to define strategies and to achieve success with the fans. We will try to make this a pleasant conversation, but to start around the vision, the challenges, but also the execution and some concerns about the future of the industry. Engaging with the fans can be totally different from sports to sports. We have here two examples, but probably you have common grounds that can be applied to both of them. I would start by you, Caroline. Oracle Red Bull Racing Team launched their fan experience platform over 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Where are you at this stage within that process, and what were the goals that you have defined back on the strategy definition? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah. So hello, everyone. Really happy to be here. So we did launch the Paddock, which is our fan proposition, about 2 years ago now. And we've always wanted to put the fans at the heart of everything that we do. So our vision kind of back then and still now was very much about creating the best fan engagement experience across the entertainment industry in a way that only Red Bull Racing can. So for us, that was about marrying the global reach of Red Bull as a brand with the growth of F1. And it's probably worth mentioning there, we don't try to just be the best on the grid or even be the best within the sports world, but we do look at the entertainment industry as a whole to see kind of what are people doing, how are people interacting with their fans. And that stays true, today. That's always going to be our vision. We know that the majority of fans will never make it to a race, will never actually come to a Grand Prix, so we took that as a little bit of insight at the start and thought, okay, how do we therefore build a really, really brilliant digital proposition for fans to find a way to create an emotional connection with us as a team, despite maybe never actually attending a race. So that's where we sort of work with Oracle to build out a really personalized experience for fans online that could offer different people the right content on the right channels for them. And whilst that very much does still ring true to what we do now, I'd say the change probably has been at the start, our focus was very much on pure acquisition and growth. And while that still is a priority for us, we've now shifted much more in the last year or so to engagement and how many of these fans are coming back, how many monthly users do we have, how often are people, having an appointment to view to come and see the content that we have within the Paddock. So probably that shift from maybe pure acquisition to engagement is the main change so far, but the vision certainly remains the same.
What about you, Alex? So, concerning the stage of where you are as Premier League, which is again very powerful brand. Probably you've started this process about the fan engagement a little bit later than a Formula One. Tell us a little bit more about the process, about the definition of the strategy, the goals and the objectives, and where are you at this stage?
Yes, I will try and follow on. So yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. So I think and you touched on this already. I think pinnacle sports properties who define themselves not just as sporting competitions or teams, but as media brands, are all facing the same challenges around how do we attract, engage, and retain the audiences of the future, and what's our right to play, and what's our sort of license to operate in that space. I think when you look at football, one of the fascinating things is that there is so much content and there is so much conversation that is taking place not just on a daily basis, but on a sort of minute by minute, hour by hour basis, which is quite baffling, to be honest. And so trying to, but the downside of that is an extreme amount of fragmentation. So to sort of take Caroline's point around trying to create a single place where fans can come and engage and can come and spend their time, there are a lot of people trying to do that. So we're taking a slightly different approach, and we are some years behind, which is to say, for more casual fans coming into the ecosystem and the environment where they have an interest in the Premier League, but they may not be die-hard fans of a club. They already have that relationship and that destination that they can go and spend their time, just as Oracle and Red Bull Racing have created for their fans. How do we actually harness this sort of broader ecosystem of people who have an interest but don't really have anywhere to go other than the kind of broad fragmented network and landscape of social media? And the only tool that we have today that's really doing that with any meaningful impact, but we think we can grow it quite significantly, is Fantasy Premier League. And one of the reasons that Fantasy Premier League has become such a powerful tool is because it reflects this much more fluid fandom that we're starting to see in sport, where yes, you may have your allegiance to your team or your club or your hometown, whatever it might be, but you're also able to sort of step out of that mindset and have an allegiance to particular players or to your particular kind of hometown, or maybe it's players who behave in a certain way that you really like, or maybe it's players that your mum thinks are really attractive, or maybe it's all sorts of other things. And what we're trying to solve for is how can we learn and acknowledge and understand this multi-dimensional fandom that exists and provide an offering for it. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, but it's interesting, despite the fact that one of my further questions would be about the fantasy, so you're ruining my question. No, but of course it's one of the most, I would say, most interesting tools that leagues, and I speak as a league, can have to engage with the audience without any doubt, and I think the Premier League is doing that pretty well. Hammer, if we look into the title of our panel, couple of years ago, it didn't make any sense by having Oracle sponsoring a panel about fan experience or fan engagement. Of course, nowadays it's totally different, and you are a very powerful partner for these two brands, but many more. Considering that you might have a transversal vision rather than Formula One or football, what is the learnings that most of these industries can take one from another and to apply, of course, in a tailor-made way, but what are the major challenges that the sports brands face to use the data that a partner like Oracle can provide to achieve success?
Firstly, thank you very much for having us here. It's a great
pleasure. For the second time, yeah.
Exactly. Great pleasure to be here for the second time. And equally as well, very excited that we have Oracle Red Bull Racing, Caroline and Alex with us from the Premier League, because just to answer your question, I think Caroline and Alex have touched on that. What we're seeing in sports is a transformation that happened in many industries before, that has been driven by technology and data. Before joining Oracle, I used to work for Tottenham Hotspur, and we were looking to build the biggest stadium in London. However, when you think about what that transformation happened in sports and has been disrupted by technology and data, it's made all sports brand is to try to think beyond local fans and how they could reach global audiences. And as you mentioned, Caroline, when we were talking about the strategy, and you rightly so mentioned, the vision become much bigger than Oracle Red Bull Racing being competing with Ferrari or Mercedes, or even competing with a Premier League or La Liga. It's actually that vision is always, as Caroline mentioned again, thinking about how would you compete with entertainment brands? And the reason for that, because if you think about it, you are competing for the share of heart and minds of audience. If you got 1 hour extra in your daily life, you had a choice. You want to watch an F1 race? You want to watch a Premier League race? Premier League game? Or you maybe want to watch the Saudi League now. Or you could potentially go and have a run. Or you can watch a cinema, or go to the cinema. Or you can eat pizza. Depending on that decision that you make, you are adding value to those brands. So that is kind of the business transformation that we have seen that happening in sports, that have a fundamental shift in the way, and as you can heard from Oracle Rebel Racing and Alex, have transformed the way that those brands and many other sports brands start thinking about how they should engage with the fans. And then there are other things that has been disrupted for sure by data and technology that is not related necessarily to fan experience, from athletes being a talent-based performance to data-driven performance, from a sponsorship to partnership, from just a logo or a sticker in a car or on the broadcast to what actually those sponsors, and I call them partners now, as we do with our partners, is what is Oracle technology is helping Oracle Rebel Racing on and off the track, helping the Premier League on and off the pitch in order to win, no matter what is their business goals. So this is what we have seen, and again, that disruption we have seen as well in telecommunication, in retail, in financial services. It's just now happening in sports.
Getting back and now focusing, for example, in football, I mean, nowadays, and we have been talking about this over the past panels, and for sure we will continue doing that. There is a common opinion that football needs to reinvent itself the way that the sports is. I mean, and probably the Formula One did that on a very interesting way a couple of years ago, and it's surfing the wave. Is this so? You felt that need on the Premier League to reinvent the game, or to reinvent the way that fans engage with the game, like the Formula One did, for example, with the Drive to Survive recipe? It is something that can be applied to football? Especially in the Premier League, of course.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a reinvention. I think it's more about extension and addition. I mean, there's no denying the extraordinary power and success of football. It is the world's global game. But at the same time, when you're successful, it's always much harder to create a case for change because you've got so much more to lose. But the reality is that as successful as the sport is, the pattern of fan engagement and fan behaviour is quite core. There is a certain amount of expectation about what being a football fan entails. Whether that's from how you show up and the fact that you have to buy a season ticket and be there all the time, the fact that you need a certain level of knowledge to sort of participate and compete. Even Fantasy Premier League, which one of its sort of great mechanics is the bragging rights, is all about how good you are at knowing what to do and picking a team and so on and so forth. So I think what's incumbent on us as a sports property in the kind of global ecosystem, and I think we're all in the business of trying to get more people to engage in sport. We're all trying to tackle the threat of competition for attention and sort of competition from big entertainment, is to make sure that we have the right tools and mechanisms in place to appeal to people who don't fit that kind of core behaviour mould. And if you go, beyond the UK's borders, and you go to different territories and you go and speak to different age groups, their affinities and their motivations and their sort of appreciation of the sport does show up quite differently. And historically, we haven't really provided for that. And that's, I think, really where we're coming from, is what can the Premier League do to provide these extensions and to provide greater connectivity across the sort of overall fan ecosystem that complements what already exists that is so good from the clubs, from our media partners, from our partners. And that's really exciting because it might be inventing a Premier League race product that is all about the values of being a world-class footballer, and is actually nothing to do with the action on the pitch, but all of these things that can be stepping stones and building blocks to bringing people in. And some of it may involve content, some of it may involve different things that have happened elsewhere, but we have to discover the right ones. We'll find out.
is there any space there to involve, for example, your commercial partners, your sponsors, to be part of that strategy to engage even more with the fans and the audience?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it will be fundamental. And Amr and I were having this conversation earlier today that I think sometimes we're guilty of not connecting the dots between things. So the way that a partner activates a product is as much about appealing to audience as what their product itself is trying to do. And much better to be working in collaboration and in partnership to do that than at cross purposes to do that. And I think we all need to foster a greater sense of partnership and collaboration if we're going to be successful.
Caroline, you as head of fan experience, I would say that you have a very powerful customer journey for your fans. So you have different touch points for sure. You have the race day, you have the paddock, you have content during the week, NFTs, esports. So you're basically everywhere. Tell us a little bit more about the customer journey that the fan that really can have to engage with the Oracle Rebel racing team.
Yeah, sure. So I think Alex made a really interesting point about how fans turn up and how that does differ based on the market that you're in. So F1 is clearly a global sport. We have races all the way around the globe. We have fans all around the globe. We know from the data that we get in from our Oracle products that we have fans in all the countries around the world now. So we have to look at that differently and have different touch points for different users based on their experiences. And even to the point around partners and how you can integrate them, we will look at bringing partners on board that can enhance our fan engagement experience. So, for example, crypto partners in a space where we can turn up for an audience that are interested in NFTs or the world of Web3 in a different way, versus the sort of CX tools that we have with Oracle, where we can reach fans via email or whether it's making sure that the content that they see when they do land on our site is tailored to their preferences. So, for example, if I know that Amr as a fan loves to listen to the podcast, we will ensure that the next email he receives tells him about the latest podcast that's out. And if he also happens to be in Mexico and he's put down Checo as his favorite driver, we'll pull out some quotes from that podcast that will serve him content around Checo so that he knows it's something he'll be interested in. And I think that level of sort of personalization and taking things to a deeper perspective for the individual is really, really important. So yes, we will have all those touch points, but so will most, if not all, supporting organizations. They will look at having all the sort of standard touch points with fans. For us, it's about ensuring we are utilizing them in the correct way. It's not one piece of content that serves all. It's what's going to work across which channel for which individual. And it's not groundbreaking, but it's certainly a way that we have found to really engage with our fans on a deeper level. And when we've been doing that, we've just seen huge improvements in the engagement levels and the interactions that fans do have on our site. So it's certainly working from a global perspective.
Amr, we are talking about data and all the data that you can provide to help the sports organization to take the best decisions possible to keep engagement with the fans. Are we on a stage that you don't need no longer to explain to potential partners the powerful of the data? Where are we on these kind of conversations? How can you keep helping the sports organization to improve the accuracy of the data and to transform that data into decision making that can bring us to another level?
First, I just want to comment about Carla, what I just said. I mean, one of the things that we have seen with when the strategy is right and then you got the execution supporting it, you see a mind-blowing results. And again, I'm sure you can talk about this later on, is Make Your Mark, 30,000 pieces. It's amazing engagement level, which is going back to answer your question. The data and the technology are enablers. If you don't have that vision and a strategy of what you want to do with the data, then you are setting yourself for failure. One of the things that we start doing we did a research about the amount of data that is available for people right now. We're moving from a world where we were looking for data to give us any insight to a world where there is so much data. There are actually too much data. It's about what could you find from that data in order to deliver actionable insight. Those actionable insights could be for Caroline as a head of fan experience in order to learn about the fans so that she can deliver a personalized experience. or it could be an actionable insight to the driver to help them win races. Or it could be to the fans when we did the milestone awards for the Premier League players, where fans are able to see what is the data behind the performance. Fans are no more a passive audience. They want to learn and see what is the insight behind that performance. And that is the key. So that's kind of what we feel as well when we go and speak to Oracle Rebel Racing or the Premier League or any of our customers or partners. We start what you're trying to achieve. And then the data and technology will help you.
Caroline, going deeper on the execution, Oracle Rebel Racing team is performing pretty well. Week in, week out, Max is winning, and it will win. There is a huge and massive success this season and the past seasons, but some years it doesn't happen with the Mercedes dominating over the past years. The performance on the track somehow affects the way that you engage with the fans. You have tools to turn that around. Either you can maximize once you are performing well, or you can adapt when you're not performing well. How do you deal with that balance that you need to achieve?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think working in fan engagement is a lot easier when your team is winning a lot. So you could say that I've got it easy.
Easy season, this one.
Well, I mean, my background is I worked at Man City for about 3.5 years, and we won a few Premier Leagues and some FA Cups there, and then I went to Chelsea, and last time I was in Porto, we won the Champions League. So maybe it's just that I do have it easy at the moment.
But it's you, Caroline.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'd love to try and claim that. I don't think I should. But the kind of, to take it back to your question there, it's what we are trying to deliver as a fan engagement proposition doesn't change based on the on-track performance. So we know that we want to deliver an excellent experience for our fans. It happens to be at the moment that we are doing really well and we're seeing success, but that hasn't sort of shifted our vision or changed what we're trying to achieve. What it has done is probably unlock some more opportunities or been a bit of a catalyst for us in certain markets. So you mentioned earlier Drive to Survive. That was a huge sort of opener for us in certain markets. So you take America, for example, who are what we call kind of early adopters of Formula One. They're interested in it, and Americans love a winner. So at the moment, they're sort of leaning more towards Oracle Rebel Racing as a team that they might want to follow. That's then up to us to ensure we grab that with both hands and turn those potential fans into, fans of us as a team for a long period of time. So whilst on-track performance hasn't sort of changed what we do, it's certainly allowed us to capitalise or double down on our efforts in certain markets. And I think that's actually really important because F1 as a whole is going on this huge journey of growth. And every team's trying to grab those new markets and sort of align themselves as the team in America, for example, or in other markets that are kind of newly adopting F1. So it's certainly on us at the moment, maybe with a little bit of a head start because of on-track performance, to capitalise on that. But what we need to do is ensure that the efforts will be there regardless of the results that are coming in on the weekend, because that's not something that, as a marketing team, we are directly impacting.
Can you share with us some successful campaigns that you have launched over the past years and some results that can tell us a little bit more about the recipe of the success that you're having over the past years?
Sure, yeah. I think my favourite campaign that we've run actually is one that's in flight at the moment. Amr name-checked it a minute ago, but we have one called Make Your Mark. So I started saying, at the start of this panel that we want to put the fans at the heart of everything that we do. And Make Your Mark is where we've actually given the reins over to our fans. We said, look, we will have our fans design the cars that we will run for the US races this year. So in Miami earlier this year, and we've got Austin coming up, and the first Grand Prix that will be held in Vegas in November. We sort of put the money where our mouth is and said, look, we will give fans the opportunity to design our core product that will run around the track at those races. Never been done before. No teams run a fan livery on a Grand Prix weekend. So we said, hey, we'll do it 3 times. Let's see how that goes. So from a kind of fan perspective, it's been amazing. We had thousands and thousands of fans that would go into the paddock, our loyalty program, download a template, draw, design, Photoshop, however they want to do it, their best designs. And then the winners will be selected, and we take them out to the race, and they see their car actually run around. It's an incredible experience. But for them, it's been really, really fun from a truly kind of emotional level to connect with the team. But from a business perspective, when you're talking about kind of results and how that's gone, that's been really, really good for us in a number of ways. It's allowed us to have sort of 3 real tentpole moments across the year for acquisition. So when we announce the fact that you can design the car and the templates go live, great, that's an opportunity for acquisition. But then, you know, the longer tail that comes from that, we can run campaigns on social to look at the funniest entries or vote on the best of the rest, or kind of opportunities like that that remind fans what we're doing and give another opportunity to get involved with the paddock. And then the kind of final element is the launch of that livery. We've almost done 3 season launches with these 3 livery launches that will come, one in Miami, like I said, and 2 still to come this year. That again will be an in real life event, there'll be acquisition, there'll be further engagement that comes off the back of it. So it's been a really nice wrapper to have around kind of our key moments that we've done with fan engagement this year. And knowing what we've got to come in Austin and Vegas makes me very excited as well. So looking forward to sort of seeing those come to life.
Right.
So I think if there is anyone in the audience have any skills of graphic design,
You can share with
just
Caroline.
make sure you participate in that campaign, because you can
100%.
have an opportunity to be in the race.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing the 21 Argentinian girl,
Yeah, Martina.
who designed the Miami car. Oh my God.
That
it
was
just
amazing, yeah. So the girl that won for the design in Miami, if any of you watched the race, the car looks amazing. It had this beautiful sort of pink line across it. And that theme then translated across everything we had that weekend, whether it was our social media, our logos, our branding, etc. And she happened to be a graphic design student from Argentina, and when she flew out there and saw the car, she just burst into tears. She couldn't believe it, and I'd hope that sets her up for a really great sort of design portfolio that she can take forward into her career. But it's lovely to sort of see that final output, and we told her story as well through all the channels, which certainly went down well with the audience.
That is great, fantastic. Alex, can you touch on some areas that we might see Premier League on the future touching in terms of brand activation and engagement with the fans?
I can do my best. I don't have a
For
an
sure, you are
amazing,
brainstorming with the team
yeah.
over the past.
So I think some of the things that we've started to experiment with are similar to Caroline's point, all about trying to create more touch points and more opportunities that are very accessible for people to come in through the course of the Premier League season. If you're not a Premier League fan and you don't follow it week in, week out, it can be this sort of quite daunting, sort of amorphous thing that you're just like, oh, okay, I've just lost, you know, all my friends' lives for the next 10 months because all they're going to think about is the Premier League. And what are my different ways in? And we actually learnt a lot last season from the World Cup break of the opportunity to do this. So after the World Cup break, we ran a campaign that was all about the Premier League returning. We launched a new iteration within Fantasy Premier League, which was called the Second Chance League, which basically allowed people to start from scratch and, you know, wipe the slate clean. But we, you know, similarly, we coupled it with a lot of different content, a lot of different narrative, and encouraging the fans to put their own spin on what they were looking forward to about the Premier League returning. So we've sort of taken that approach, and we've now tried to drip feed that throughout the year so that you've got these very clear narrative peaks around the start of the season, returns from international break, which we're in the middle of one at the moment, the festive period around Christmas, another sort of return from a pause in activity, and then really into the run-in, which is this extraordinary 10 weeks where genuinely every single match counts and matters, and then the sort of final day of the season. So we're trying to sort of drip feed into those big moments, different acquisition opportunities, different content opportunities, and different reasons that give people, you know, an incentive to come in. And one of those is going to include a new version or a new format for Fantasy Premier League that will run more consistently to complement the season-long game, but very much with that aspiration of being very accessible. Other things I think we're sort of yet to properly dive into, and some of it actually comes back to properly understanding the data, understanding those moments where we can create entry points, understanding those types of things that are going to really appeal to different fans from different places. And this is a bad analogy, so apologies, but I used to work at Wimbledon in tennis, and we spent so much of our time talking about the sort of the traditions of Wimbledon and the prestige and the glory and the sense of place. And we thought, you know, in our little ivory tower in southwest London, that resonated with everyone. And we then had our Brazilian broadcasters visit us, and it was the first time that they'd come for ages. And they basically said, this is so boring. What our fans want to see is carnival and activity and colour and vibrancy. And we realised that actually we had that in some of the Wimbledon brand attributes. We had the hill and the queue, and I'm not sure how familiar you might be with some of these things. And all it took was a slight shift of focus and emphasis and narrative to bring to life some of those things that were going to resonate. And I'm sure it will be the same in the Premier League. We just need to work out what they are and what the right interventions are.
Great. Talking just to the same question for both of you, talking about the main interventions about the business that we develop. I mean, the artists, the pilots, and the players. They are, I would say, the most important ingredient about the sport. Of course, the supporters are one of the most important ingredients. In the Premier League, you think in terms of mentalities, the players, the coaches, they feel that they need to be part of the success of the strategy, and they need to be available to participate in actions, to engage with the fans. Do you think you need to convince them, to put arguments on that, or you in terms of mentality, you don't need to waste more time on that? Because if they don't cooperate, if they don't do what, for example, the pilots on the Drive to Survive did, to open the doors to some of the most interesting content that people want to assist. How are you on that? There is something that you struggle with the clubs and with the players, or not?
I mean, it's absolutely fundamental. I read a report at some point in the last month or so that says we're in the age of the individual. And it is true that, again, particularly amongst newer fans and from people from different territories and with different sort of expectations, the players are the stars, and they want to feel like they have access to them, and they want to feel like they understand them. And that doesn't just mean that they know that they can take an amazing penalty or that they're brilliant at crossing the ball. It really is about what makes them tick. And we were talking before, that's one of the things that Drive to Survive obviously has done so incredibly well. I think in football we're very blessed to have a lot of access to the players, and the clubs do brilliantly at enabling that and facilitating that. So again, similarly, it's not about trying to create more or changing it. It's more just about tweaking it and tweaking, you know, what they do. We were having a discussion this week with our broadcasters in Paramount Plus, who look after Central America, and they were sort of saying that everyone thinks that the only people that we should put forward to them are Spanish-speaking players. But actually, there's a fascination with all sorts of different characters for all sorts of different reasons. Some of it being driven by on-pitch performance, which is, you know, the sort of Haaland story. But actually, Ronaldo continues to be a god in that part of the world, not just because of how brilliantly he played football, but his whole attitude to life, his kids, all of that other kind of stuff. So I think that's the challenge, is convincing people, including our media partners, that we need to slightly tweak how we bring the stories of the players to life and continue to invest the time in doing that.
How about you in the
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually, and I think it's worth talking maybe a little bit about the different dynamic between fandom in F1 and potentially in football, because Drive to Survive is a great example, right? It's really brought people in because of the drama of telling the stories of the individuals and of the drivers. But what you would see potentially if you were to attend a Grand Prix, and how it would differ from if you were to attend a football match, is fandom is a little bit different in the world of Formula One. You might see a fan that will come up to you in a McLaren t-shirt, a Red Bull Racing hat, a Mercedes bag, and they are just a fan of the sport. And that's actually far, far more common than what you would ever get in the world of football, which is much more tribal. It might be that your mum or your dad supports a team, and therefore you support a team, and you will never change. Versus Formula One, where it's actually a little bit more fluid, and there's a lot more fans that will support the driver versus the team. And that's a huge part of my role, to try and flip that narrative. And you might have somebody come in who is Dutch and they support Max, and therefore they want to follow Red Bull Racing, great, that's on me to therefore get them to follow us as a team rather than the driver. So there's a little bit of a different dynamic from a sort of driver to player perspective in football. But it is undeniable that the drama and the stories behind the individuals who are performing on that stage is what can really sort of capture hearts and minds of fans. So we know there's a balance there that we have to play into, and part of our job is to do that in the most effective way, utilise the drivers where we can, but also tell stories of the team. There's a huge team behind the drivers that go out and race around the tracks at a Grand Prix. There's a team that are out there in terms of the pit crew, the engineers and the PTs and everybody around them. And then there's a huge team of strategists and analysts and people back at the factory who are looking at in the ops room and looking at all the telemetry data and looking at what the strategy should be that they will, tell the team on the ground around when to pit, when to change tyres, etc., etc. There is a huge operation around the two drivers that are actually racing on track. So actually telling those stories has been really, really important for us from a fan perspective, to sort of convert those people who watched an episode of Drive to Survive and thought maybe that Checo might be their favourite driver into, wow, this team is great. There's a huge performance and operation that goes behind kind of Formula One and going out on a Sunday. So we try to tell that narrative instead, and actually really explore the sort of team behind the team in some of our content and our comms.
Great. Getting closer to the end, one last question for you, Amr, about the future. What do you think are the trends of the future in terms of fan experience and the use of new technologies like NFTs, Web 3.0, to artificial intelligence? We might face a very different scenario in the upcoming future.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we, as I'm always saying, that working with the Premier League and Oracle Red Bull Racing and SailGP, who are not here, by the way, I was supposed to be with them in Saint-Tropez and I chose to be here, so one of the things that always very healthy for that relationship is that those partners pushing us and helping us to push the boundaries with the technology and the innovation in terms of what they want to achieve. And equally as well, we do sometimes try to push them out of their comfort zone in some areas. And you touched on some of the areas about the NFTs. So the reason of mentioning SailGP, because their paddock and their loyalty program is integrating with NFTs. So then the fans are always equally as well rewarded for their engagement with the brands, but equally as well they can have the NFT element of that. And this is just a step one of the loyalty program to tap into the world of Web 3.0. Again, we have to think about the new generation. We have, and again, Alex, you mentioned about the aging fan population. How could we're going to be, and equally as well, Pedro, you mentioned about kind of the 90 minutes game of the football. It's not only for the football, it's for every single sport, how every single sport will going to need to evolve in order to attract those new audiences. The other element, which is, again, I think, Alex, you touched in one of those elements before, or you can think about that from a Red Bull Racing or F1 perspective, is the highlights of the game or the race. And this is something that AI and machine learning will going to start helping fans to see. Imagine you seeing the highlights of a football game or a race, but you see the clips of your favorite player or your favorite racer. But imagine if even you see it with his voice, and he is the narrator of that story. So those are the things that you will going to start seeing with the machine learning and AI. Some of the things that's what we're discussing with SailGP is rather than having and seeing the game from the eyes of the broadcasters, which is actually Ben Foster have done in the Wrexham game, when he got a GoPro, so you could have seen some clips actually from the eye of the goalkeeper. And that's kind of going to be one of the key areas that are going to be, again, you talked to Alex a couple of times about the broadcasting. It's one of the industries that I think will going to be disrupted next. In order, how would you see the game from the eye of the person that's shooting the ball? Or from the eye when the goalkeeper are expecting the goal? We start seeing that actually with the F1, but you're probably going to start seeing that from different perspectives. And then the last element, which is I'm sure that we start seeing some attempts on that, is a second screen experience. People don't want to see sitting passively watching a sports game. They want to have the power in order to see the data and the performance that is driving what they're seeing on TV. So for sure, it's continuous kind of, as I mentioned, debate and conversation between Oracle Rebel Racing with the Premier League. They always want to innovate. We always want to test and try our technology and push the boundaries as well. So for sure, hopefully you will going to see some new stuff and the way to engage with fans and winning their hearts and minds.
So for sure, we have matter to have you here on the next edition as well, since you are on the second time, so for the third. We are already on extra time, unfortunately. I think we have matter to keep talking of for the rest of the afternoon, but unfortunately it's not possible. Thank you very much for coming. As up to you, continue to enjoy the rest of the summit. Desfrutem do resto do summit. Obrigado por terem vindo.
Thank you. Obrigado.
Thank you.